Hey guys, it's Sartak. In this video, we're going to talk about how to implement a queue using two stacks, which is just going to be another implementation of the stack class that we talked about in the past few videos. So let's just get into it. So we'll talk about how to implement a queue with two stacks. And basically what a queue is it's kind of the opposite in the stack, in the sense that if you want to append numbers, say, or append values, say we want to append the values 1 and 2, we can append 1, we can append 2. But when we want to pop off something, remember how in a stack, when we pop off something, there's this last in, first out. The last element that we push onto the stack is the first element that's going to be popped off. Well, in a queue, it's going to be different. It's basically going to be the first element that's pushed in is going to be the first element that's popped out. So over here, we can see that our queue has values of 1, 2. That way, when we pop off the number 1 and we keep the value 2. And then if we pop off again, then we pop off the value 2, and then we get an empty queue. So with two stacks, basically the way that we're going to implement it is we're going to have one stack where we append all the values, and when we want to pop off a number, we'll make use of that second stack in order to store some of the values. So for example, say we want to append the number 1 onto our queue, we'll append it into we'll have two stacks within our queue class. We'll append it onto the first stack, and say we'll leave the other stack empty, blank. So whenever we're pushing or appending to the stack, we just populate the first stack first, and then with the number 2, say we want to append number 2, then we append onto the original stack, and we have a stack with the values 1 and 2, and then an empty stack. But when we want to pop, we can't just pop from the original stack, because remember, whenever we have a stack, it pops off the last item. So this would pop off the 2, even though we want to pop off the 1. So therefore, we need to make use of the other stack. So what we do is we copy these values into the other stack in reverse order. So we'll pop off the value from this stack into this stack. So we'll get the 2. We'll remove it from the original stack, and we'll put it into this other stack. So now we have two stacks. One with a value of 1, one with a value of 2, which is the value that's popped off the original stack. Then we'll pop off the next value, which is the 1, and we'll put it into this stack. So we'll get an empty stack and a stack with the values 2, 1. And then since we know that this stack is empty, what we can do is we can just pop off the value from this stack right here, our second stack. We'll get the value 1, which, if you remember, is the correct value that we're supposed to pop off because it's in the beginning of the list. And then we'll just have an array with the values 2 in the second stack, and just an empty stack in the original, or an original stack that's empty. And so what we can do is we can just take the value from our second stack and copy it back into our original stack, and so we get a value of 2. So it might sound a little complicated, but hopefully when I do the implementation in code, it'll make more sense. So the main functions that we're going to implement are the push method, the pop method, the isEmpty method, length method, and the peek method. So all these methods are really similar to the stack if you guys watched that video, and which makes sense because they're very similar. It's just the way that we pop off elements is slightly different. So let's start. Let's make a class queue. Let's define a constructor. So in this, we'll have a self dot. I'll just call it an original stack, and we'll initialize that to a stack. And we'll call the second stack a copy stack, because it's the stack that we're going to use to copy when we want to pop off a value. We're going to copy all our values from the original stack into our copy stack, and then pop off the copy stack. So it'll essentially just mirror our original stack whenever we need it to. So let's just do the first function right here. Function push self. So, this also takes in the data. So this will basically do self dot our original stack dot push data, and that's all that we're gonna need to do for that. For the second function, which is pop, this is where it's gonna be a little more sophisticated, in the sense that we're gonna have to utilize our second stack, our copy stack. So what we'll do is we'll check. Actually, you know what? Let's implement the length function first. So if we have a length function, length self, just that. Then what we can do is we can return self.orig.getLength, which if you guys kind of noticed, whenever we're getting length, it doesn't matter whether we're getting the length from the original stack or the copy stack, because they're still gonna have the same number of values. The order of the values will be different, but either way, the number of values that we have in there is the same. So the implementation, we can take either one and it'll work. We have to take the original, but even if we were to switch these up a little, it wouldn't really matter. And then for the pop function, what we can do is we can check if self.length is equal to 1. And what we can do is we can return self.orig.pop, right? So it's essentially, if our stack is like, or if our queue just has a value 1, then we can just pop off this element. We don't need to make use of that other copy stack, because we can just we know that we only have one element, so when we pop off that element, that's going to be the element that the user requires. Otherwise, and we'll also check that if self.length if self.length equals 0, then we just return. Now let's check essentially next when we check if there's multiple values. So essentially, if we have an array or a queue with the values 1, 2, and 3, then what we'll do is while self.orig.is empty, or rather when it's not empty, right? So we want to keep looping through this while loop while this has values. And what we'll do is we'll slowly copy each of these values into our new stack. So essentially what's going to happen is we're going to copy the value 3. So we'll have an original stack with values 1 and 2, and then a value of 3 in our copy stack. Then we have a value 1 in our original stack, and values 3, 2 in our copy stack. And then we'll eventually have an empty stack that will also have, and our copy stack will have values 3, 2, and 1. And then in that case, we'll just pop off this, and then just copy all our values back into this array right here. So what we can do is while self.orig is empty, while it's not empty, we can self.copy.push the popped value of our original stack, right? So this is where we take the last value of our original stack and just append it and push it into our copy stack. And so when it is empty, when these values are empty, we can take that last value of our copy stack, which is the popped value, and we can get self.copy.pop. And because we're popping it, we know that eventually this function right here, what will happen after this function runs is we'll have an empty stack, and then a copy stack that will have the values 3 and 2, and our popped value variable will have the value 1. And so eventually what we can do is we can copy these values back into our original stack. So we can pop off the 2 and put it into our original stack. Then we'll have a copy stack with a value of 3, and our pop value is still 1. Then we'll once again copy or pop off the last value from our copy stack and put it into our original stack. So we'll have an original stack with the values of 2 and 3, an empty copy stack, and then our pop value is still 1. So that way we've basically popped off the front of our original stack while also maintaining kind of the integrity and sticking to the problem, which requires us to use 2 stacks to implement a queue. So now that we've popped it off, we can do a similar thing that we did up here. So we can check while self.copy is not empty, meaning it still has values, we can copy those values into our original stack. So we can do self.copy.pop. So, and then we can just return popped val. So right now, let's just check to make sure that these work right now. So we can declare a queue equals queue. What we can do is queue dot push. We'll push the values 5, or we'll do the same values 1, 2, 3, and we also want to print. So what we'll do is we'll define a string variable or a string function just so that we can print our queue properly. And what we'll do is we'll return self yeah, we'll do self dot str of self dot original stack. So if we print our queue over here and we run it, new terminal, oh, whoops. What? Oh, it's because I'm in the wrong. Yeah, let's just try new terminal. Alright, so for some reason it's in the wrong directory, so let me quickly cd into the right directory. Python stack. Oh, that's the other one. So we can see that our stack over here has the values 1, 2, and 3, which are the values that we have up here. So now if we do, or our queue has the values 1, 2, and 3. If we do queue.pop, if we actually print that out, and then print out queue one more time, what we should see is the first value from our queue should be gone, and it should be in the popped, it should be printed in the queue.pop function. So if we do python stack.py, so we can see over here we have 1, 2, and 3. The 1 is popped off, and now we have a 2 and a 3. So if we do that one more time, you can see that that works. And then if we do that one last time, you can see that now we have an empty queue and we've popped off all the values. So I hope that was helpful to you guys, and you guys learned a little bit about what a queue is and how you can implement it using 2 stacks. And yeah, I hope that was useful, and have a nice day. Peace.